I never thought that paying the last installment of my son's mortgage would mark the beginning of my own loneliness. There I was, in Fort Lauderdale, with my canvas bag full of sunscreen, my passport in hand, and my heart racing as if I were 20 again. But before I go on, write down the city you're from. It's important for us to know how far our stories reach. It was August 7th, the day of departure for the family cruise. Or so I believed, until the phone rang. You're not coming with us on the cruise. Emily prefers it to be just family. It was a text message from my son, David. I read that line 3 times, just family, as if I didn't count. I looked up, and there they were, David and Emily on the ship's deck, waving as if it were a postcard. It wasn't a farewell, it was a declaration. I was left alone in the terminal, with the stiff smile of someone who doesn't know if she's dreaming or falling into a pit. And the worst part wasn't the abandonment, but knowing that only a month ago I had finished paying off the mortgage for their house. My name was still on the deed. Yes, mine. The same woman who signed as co-signer because they didn't qualify yet. The same one who baked carrot cake every Sunday so that David would arrive hungry. The same one who welcomed Emily with a smile, even though from the beginning she looked at me as if I were speaking another language. And now, the one in the way was me. I went back home with dry eyes. Cry? No. I no longer shed tears for betrayals disguised as preferences. I only felt that old stab in my chest, the one you ignore when you love too much. I took off my shoes at the door, as always, and knew this was no mistake, it was a statement. That night I made myself a chamomile tea, my usual ritual, and pulled out the folder where I keep the house documents, the deed, the transfers, the notary papers. Everything was still in my name. While the steam from the cup fogged my glasses, I felt something awaken inside me. It wasn't pain or full clarity, it was like a veil being lifted. Emily had been erasing me for years. First she said I spoke too loudly at dinners, then, that my laughter was annoying. Then came David, repeating like a parrot, "Mom, you're too much." Yet the checks were always welcome. Then I understood, I wasn't part of their family, I was their emergency fund. That night, while the cruise sailed away and they posted pictures of their couples healing, I did something else. I clenched my fists and promised myself that if they wanted distance, they would have it, legal and permanent. Back in my condo, that silence after the contempt hit me harder than any scream. I sat at the kitchen table, where I had counted bills so many times to help them. I pulled out the house folder and reviewed every paper, every transfer, every receipt, all in my name, nothing legally given away. And as the documents piled up, so did the memories. Emily, with that perfect smile and sharp words. Once she told me I spoke too loudly at dinners. I don't know if it was before or after I gave them the porcelain dinnerware. David, my son, my boy, told me I was too intense. And what other choice did I have, if I had been both mother and father? Of course, when they were short for the washer, the car, or the insurance, then I was the perfect mother. The little slights were the first cracks, like when Emily moved me at the Christmas table because it was more convenient not to have me sit next to them. Or when they organized the baby shower for their first daughter without telling me and just sent me a group photo as consolation. I always told myself, they're young, they'll grow out of it. But it wasn't immaturity, it was strategy. Little by little they pushed me to the edge until I fell without realizing it. Even then, I kept making excuses. With that phrase, just family, driven in like a knife, I could no longer cover the sun with a finger. The papers didn't lie. I had paid the down payment for that house. I had signed as partial owner. I had covered 3 years of back taxes when they were struggling. And still, there was never a dinner, a toast, a family photo that included me. The coral dress I bought for the cruise was still hanging in my closet, with the tag. I thought maybe we'd dine together the first night. I imagined a glass of wine, a hidden photo with my granddaughter. Now my only toast would be with myself. I took a notebook and began to write. Not emotions, but facts. Deed, still in my name. Mortgage, paid off with my pension. Contributions estimated, $200 in 5 years. I had never done that math. When you love, you don't add, you give. But that night, with the calm that follows heartbreak, I told myself, it's over. There would be no scandal, no begging, no tears. Just a silent decision and a plan. 2 days passed since the ship departed. 2 days of silence, the kind that sounds louder than 1,000 slamming doors. I woke up early, checked my email out of habit, and there it was, an alert from my American Express card. Charge approved. $628. Ocean Breeze Spa. I had to read it twice. They had charged the expense to the card I used to book the cruise. The same card I put down to make things easier, because I trusted, because he's my son and he wouldn't let me down. Not only did they not invite me, not only did they erase me, on top of that, they used me. That amount, for Emily to smear essential oils on herself while I boiled rice in my kitchen. Something inside me changed right then. It was no longer sadness or disappointment, it was something else, a cold, sharp clarity, like when you realize it wasn't a mistake, it was a plan. I turned off the computer, found the physical card in the tablecloth drawer, and, with a steady hand, dialed the number. American Express. How can we help you? I want to cancel my card and dispute the spa charge. I didn't authorize it. The operator asked if I had lost the card. I lied, yes, I lost it. I lost my trust. That was the first action, small but decisive. The second was to return to the house folder. I reviewed everything again, the original contract, the clauses, the verbal agreement we never signed, because we're family. The mistake was mine, of course. I trusted love more than the law, but fortunately I never signed the transfer. Legally, the house was still mine. I, the intense one, the too emotional one, was the absolute owner of the house where they now took selfies in front of the Christmas tree I had also bought. I made myself a tea, not chamomile this time, something stronger, an Earl Grey. And I called my lawyer. Mr. Richard Coleman, it's me. Do you have a few minutes? I need advice and maybe more. There was something in my voice that left no room for doubt. That was the day I stopped being the good mother-in-law. That was the day I stopped being the available mother. That was the day I began to turn into the woman who doesn't forgive, but does collect. The first step was canceling the card. I had already done that. I closed that door firmly, and it was time to open another. I pulled out the case file of the house, the one I always kept in a brown leather folder that smelled of old stationery and dignity, and placed it on the table, right where I used to serve Christmas dinner. The house, your house, they used to say. But the title was still in my name. The transfer had never been completed because, when I asked if they wanted to formalize it, David said, "Why, Mom? This is family." Yes, family, until family becomes inconvenient. I sat down, pencil in hand, and began writing dates, income, expenses, transfers. I arranged it as if it were someone else's case. I needed distance, coldness, precision. When I finished, I called Mr. Richard Coleman, my lawyer. Mr. Coleman has been my lawyer for years, the same one who helped me sell my first house after my husband's death, the one who always treats me like a lady with respect, not like a fool with an open credit card. "Richard," I said calmly, "I want to recover what's mine. Legally, without scandals, but with the full force of the law." There was silence on the other end, and then I heard his steady voice. "You have every right. The deed is clean. Do you want to sell?" "I want to disappear, so when they return they won't even have ground beneath their feet," I replied. With that sentence, my plan began. Mr. Coleman explained the steps simply. In reality, no one can evict you from a property that isn't theirs. No one can claim what they never received legally. And if I wanted to sell, I could do so without asking their permission, because even if it hurt them, I was the owner. That afternoon I did something else. I called a private real estate agent, not just any, but a discreet one, the kind who doesn't put up a sign and works with silent buyers and cash offers. I sent her the papers, explained my situation, and told her, I don't want noise, I want results. In less than 48 hours I had a buyer. Offer in hand, cash payment. Closing date, August 21st, the same day the cruise returned. I smiled. Not out of malice, but out of justice. That night I slept as I hadn't slept in years, without guilt, without jolts. He wanted exclusivity, well, he was going to have it. David had erased me from his list of family. Perfect, but not without first signing his own emotional and financial eviction. They don't want me there? Then neither I nor the house will be there. On the 4th day of the cruise I received the first attempt to backtrack. A voice message, not a direct call, not a video call to look me in the eyes, just a simple message, like someone tossing a stone into the water and hoping not to get splashed. Hey, Mom. Emily's been a bit stressed. She just wanted this trip to be special, intimate. But we love you. We'll talk when we get back. Yes. Of course. Now it turns out that excluding me from a family trip I helped pay for was about stress. David's voice sounded sweet, rehearsed, as if he were reading a letter someone else had written. We love you. 3 empty words, spoken like anesthesia so the knife in the back wouldn't hurt as much. But this time it didn't hurt. This time it brought me a dry, internal laugh. After years of enduring passive-aggressive comments, of smiling while they slipped claws disguised as compliments, after paying for dinners where I was the only one who asked how the day had gone. Now they wanted to talk. I didn't answer, and not because I didn't know what to say, but because I was no longer interested in justifying myself or begging for crumbs of attention. The house was already for sale, the offer signed, the closing date set, the locks changed, everything legal, everything silent, every day without a word from me. They kept sailing on an illusion, while I walked firmly on solid ground, dismantling the world they had so comfortably built on my shoulders. They wanted space. Perfect. I gave them miles. They wanted intimacy. They could have it, but without my walls. While they toasted with sparkling wine on the deck, I was toasting with myself. And believe me, that toast tasted better than any they had refused to share with me. The following Monday Mr. Coleman called me with the calm voice of someone who already has the fish in the pan. The deed is clean, no liens or promises of transfer. You can sell whenever you want without notifying anyone. I gave him the green light. By noon the agent called me, excited. The buying couple had offered the full amount. Cash payment. Closing scheduled, August 21st at 9 in the morning, the same day the cruise returned. I didn't put a sign outside, no, for sale. I didn't want alerts, I wanted precision. That same afternoon I called a locksmith I trusted. Can you come tomorrow? I want to change every lock in this house. All of them. And this time only 2 copies of the keys. There was something liberating about it. Changing the locks wasn't just a physical act, it was symbolic. It was like finally closing the door to emotional abuse, to manipulations disguised as affection, to codependence camouflaged as family. I stored the new keys in a ceramic jar that said lemon tea. My mother-in-law had given it to me years ago, and I placed it on the highest shelf in the kitchen. No one looked there. Then I sat on the couch with a notebook and began to write. Not a diary, a list. Change locks. Sign sale. Cancel credit card. Notify the closing attorney. Done. Pack my important things. Remove items of sentimental value. Clean the kitchen one last time. And at the end I wrote, I'll be gone before they arrive. This time I'm the one who disappears without an invitation. That night I made myself a double chamomile infusion, not out of sadness but out of habit. I turned my wedding ring, the one I never took off, not even when I became a widow, not even when my son began to vanish, and I promised myself something. This is not revenge, it's restoration. They played with my patience but forgot that I still had the title deed, and that, ladies, is the only paper that truly matters. The news began to leak. Not from me, of course. I didn't say anything, I just acted. But the murmurs began, that I had sold the house, that I no longer wanted to see David, that I was bitter. My sister was the first to call me, Margaret, did you really do that? Did you sell the house? Yes, it was mine. Why? Because that's not God's way. You're better than this. I stayed silent for a second, then took a deep breath. And which part exactly isn't God's way, Susan? The part where they left me at the dock like an employee with a suitcase, or the part where they used my card to pamper themselves at the spa? She sighed. She told me something about forgiving. About family, about acting from the wound. I just told her, this wound already has a scab, and it's called a legal deed. She hung up on me. I wasn't surprised. My sister never understood what it's like to raise children alone. She doesn't know what it feels like to give, and in the end be told you're too much. I didn't need her approval or anyone else's. While she spoke of morals, I was wrapping my porcelain dinnerware in bubble wrap. While David and Emily posted photos of sunsets and piña coladas, I was dusting the last shelf, leaving everything ready for the new owners. The next day a neighbor greeted me with a mix of pity and judgment in her voice. So you're moving out. How sad. I thought that house was for your grandchildren. I smiled. Yes, for my grandchildren. When they invite me to their birthdays, we'll talk. I walked away without waiting for a reply, because that was another lesson. Sometimes respect comes after a slammed door. Humiliation isn't always public. Sometimes it happens in your own living room with a glass of wine in your hand and with the mother-in-law ignored. But dignity can still be silent and powerful. And while the rest thought I had gone too far, I knew I was only just beginning. I was cleaning the kitchen, checking every drawer before leaving for good. It wasn't nostalgia, it was protocol. I am one of those women who don't leave crumbs behind or dust in the corners. My mother used to say that a house is either handed over with dignity or not at all. In the last drawer, behind some empty envelopes and a notebook I didn't recognize, I found a blue folder without a name. I opened it without thinking, and there it was, printed and underlined, an email from Emily. Subject, deed transfer, continued occupancy. She was writing to a notary. It laid out a plan. She had copied David. It said, with the utility bills in our name and proof of prolonged occupancy, we could start the quitclaim deed process. It's almost ours, we just need to hold out. Hold out. That's how they saw me, like a rock in the road. Their plan was, of course, to keep the house through attrition, through presence, through persistence, like someone who invades land and then claims rights through time. I sat in the kitchen chair with that folder in my hands. The chamomile infusion was still steaming on the tablecloth, and I felt that strange mix of old anger and new relief. They wanted to erase me legally, but they were too late. That same week I had already closed the sale. The closing attorney had cleared everything, the money was in the process of being deposited, and the keys were already different. They thought they could erase my name from the deed like erasing a contact from a phone. But they forgot something basic. I am not just a signature, I am the founder. That house was not inheritance nor gift. It was investment, it was love disguised as a roof. It was the patience of a mother who thought she was indispensable. And now it was proof that I hadn't forgotten how to protect myself. I put the blue folder in my bag as evidence. Mr. Coleman, my lawyer, told me it might come in handy if they tried something later. But I wasn't afraid anymore, because I was no longer reacting, I was leading. Let them try, now I'm the one who resists. And not from the living room couch, but from the firm ground of the law. 2 days remained until closing. That morning I packed my last bag. I made sure to take everything, the photo albums, the jewelry I still had, the cookie recipe I always used with my granddaughter. Though I'm not even sure if she remembers me anymore. I also took my old blanket, the one that smells like weekends. The only thing I left was the gray couch where they used to sprawl and watch TV as if everything belonged to them. Let the new owners use it, I thought. It's comfortable, and I don't carry grudges or useless furniture. The night before, I had walked through the house with the calm of someone closing a cycle. I touched each wall as if I wanted to thank every corner for having sheltered me and them for so many years. Then I wrote a note. It wasn't a letter, nor a complaint. It was just a truth printed firmly: this property has been sold. Do not attempt to enter. All communication will be handled by attorney Mr. Richard Coleman. I signed it, taped it to the door with thick tape, and made sure it wouldn't fly away. I placed another copy on the entryway table. The new owners had confirmed they would arrive on August 21st at 8 in the morning, the very same day the cruise docked back. Perfect synchronicity. The final gesture was checking the cameras, not to spy on them but to protect myself from any tantrum or dramatics. At 7:30 in the morning, I walked out the door. I turned the new lock one last time. I placed the keys in a sealed envelope with the real estate agent's address and left without looking back. I didn't cry, I didn't tremble, only felt a strange peace, like when you finally pull out a thorn you've been pretending didn't hurt for years. They got the cruise. I got freedom, and a note on the door as the signature of my rebirth. Once the keys were delivered and the sale closed, I went straight to my cousin Linda's house on the coast. A week for myself, with no schedules, no calls. Mr. Coleman knew exactly what to do. I left him clear instructions. Any attempt at contact, insult, complaint, or plea from David or Emily was to be redirected directly to his office. I didn't want to hear about it. I didn't need to know if they cried, shouted, or begged. I had already done my part. In the envelope I taped to the door, along with the notice of sale, I included Mr. Coleman's card, his name, his email, his office number. Everything well presented, like an invitation to a wedding where they, this time, were the uninvited. Mr. Coleman called me the next day, amused and astonished. They started early, he said. At 8:17 in the morning the phone rang, first him, then her, then both together, then messages, then emails. And what did you do? I asked, stirring my coffee while watching the sea. What you asked me to do, he replied. I informed them that any legal claim had to go through the proper channels, that the property had been transferred correctly, and that you did not wish to have contact. And they understood. They were left speechless, but not without anger. I smiled. Not out of malice, but out of relief. Because for years I had been the one answering their calls at any hour. I was the one running to the bank, the one solving everything, the one crying silently when, after giving, I never even got a thank you. But now all of that had a filter, Mr. Coleman, a wall of professionalism between my heart and their manipulation. The new owner sent me a kind message. Everything's in order. Thank you for leaving everything clean. Your energy can be felt in the house. It's good. I didn't cry, but my eyes watered. Perhaps someone, at last, valued not only the house but also what one builds with love. That day I sat by the sea with my notebook and wrote one phrase. This time, I'm the one who hangs up the phone. Emily couldn't handle the silence. During the rest of the cruise, her Instagram became a parade of veiled jabs disguised as spirituality. A photo on the deck, in a white robe and a face of total peace, healing with my family core. 2 hearts. Boundaries are love. Another picture with David holding their daughter, grateful for those who truly stand by us. Everything else, you let go. And then the gem, a selfie with the ocean behind her. Nothing like stepping away from toxicity to reconnect with yourself. Ocean wave, shooting star. Post after post, each one with date, time, and a passive-aggressive tone polished like a fine wine glass. What they didn't know was that while they thought they were telling their version, I already had the final act prepared. Because I had learned that social media is the ego's favorite stage, and ego, when it inflates too much, always bursts. They were sailing toward a house that was no longer theirs. Smiling as if the world belonged to them, without suspecting that by the time they got back, the locks would already be changed. There was no scandal, no, how could you, Mom? Just a silent, legal wait. I worked patiently, like when David was little and I sewed his Halloween costumes until midnight. Only this time, the costumes were theirs, and soon they would fall off. I, on the other hand, was weaving a new destiny. In my notebook I already had another list. Lease signed on the coast. Done. New bank account. Done. Will updated. Done. Number blocked, Emily. Done. Number blocked, David. Done. Final item, no more empty apologies. Because what they thought was absence was strategy. What they called boundaries was my newly conquered freedom. And while they kept sailing, I had already reached solid ground. The night before their return, my phone vibrated. A message from David: Mom, I hope we can reconnect. You are part of our family, you always will be. I read it once, then again, and left it on read. The irony made me smile. Because isn't love timely? A week earlier I had been too loud, too intense, too annoying to include on a trip that, incidentally, I had helped pay for. And now, just before setting foot back on land, I was family again. But family doesn't leave you at the dock. Family doesn't smile from the ship's deck while you swallow your shame in the terminal. Family doesn't bathe in spa oils with your card while you eat toast, staring at the sea through your kitchen window. That message was emotional bait, but I no longer fell for lures. I saved it as evidence, as a reminder, as confirmation that I had done the right thing. Because if I learned anything, it's that when the money runs out, the "we love you" runs out too. But this time the money went with me, and what was left was only their reflection. David, my son, still didn't understand that love isn't eternal when only one side feeds it. I had loved, I had given, I had believed, and they had simply made themselves comfortable until the day I stood up and said, enough. What they call betrayal, I call awakening. That message, so full of sugar and guilt, was the last spoonful I refused to swallow. I turned off the phone. Tomorrow they would get the welcome they deserved. Not with screams, but with a paper on the door and a lock that no longer opened for them. It was the dawn of August 21st. They were returning from the cruise that night. I knew it. They always fly at night to take advantage of the day. And like everything in their lives, calculated for their own convenience. I was no longer in the city, I was in my new apartment on the coast, with the window open and the sound of the waves as my only company, but I could picture it all. The car pulling up to the curb, the suitcases rolling on the pavement, the tired giggles after a week of sea and aloe vera masks. And then, silence. The first sign that something wasn't right, the porch light off. Then the useless click of keys turning with no effect. Once. Again. A hard knock. Nothing. On the door, taped with heavy-duty tape, the note, property sold. All communication must be handled through attorney Mr. Richard Coleman. Do not attempt to enter. Security system active. I imagine Emily's face, that look of disbelief she only shows when something escapes her control. I imagined David checking his phone, looking for a message from me that never came. I imagined the moment they realized there was no mistake, no pending explanation. Only consequences. At 8 o'clock sharp, the new owners arrived. A young couple, kind, with a moving truck ready and papers signed. I had already explained everything to them, the history, the keys, the cameras, the necessary silence. They understood, even wished me luck. David and Emily, on the other hand, understood nothing, because they had always believed a mother's love was like tap water, automatic, constant, free of charge. That morning, the house I had built with love looked at them from the other side of the door and didn't recognize them. A few hours after the final slam, Emily did what she knew best, theater. She posted an Instagram story with red eyes and very strategically smeared makeup, accompanied by white text on a black background. Imagine your mother-in-law giving you a house and then taking it back. Minutes later she posted, some people never get over their children growing up and starting their own families. How sad when resentment speaks louder than love. But the best part came in the comments. Her usual followers, the ones who always left hearts and gorgeous, began asking questions. One wrote, "Was the house in your name?" Another, more direct, "Did she sign the deed over to you?" And then an old friend of David's appeared, one of those he thought never paid attention. "My mom knows Mrs. Margaret Johnson. She paid for everything. Emily, it's not your house if there's no paper." Shrug emoji. The domino effect was immediate. The narrative of the wounded daughter-in-law collapsed like a sandcastle. David tried to intervene with a vague story. Some things aren't resolved on social media. But the damage was already done. And one user replied, "The damage was leaving your mom on shore while you used her card." I said nothing, didn't reply, didn't post anything. Because when a truth is well written, with lawyers, signatures, and notaries, it doesn't need defending on Facebook. Social media became their mirror, and they didn't like what they saw. Their version didn't hold. Their shame, however, went viral. And while the virtual world burned, I brewed another chamomile tea, this time with a smile, because at last, the story they had always spun in their favor had written itself in my defense. I moved to a smaller place by the sea, quiet, fresh. There are no extra rooms, no wedding decorations, no photo frames with forced smiles. Just what I need, my blue armchair, my wool blanket, and a kettle that whistles softly at 6 in the evening. David no longer calls. Emily, I imagine, is still spinning in her own version of events, trying to find angles that make her the victim. But I no longer care. The curious thing is, I don't feel anger. There is no hate, no pain. There is a void, yes, but a clean void, like when you finish emptying a closet, throw out what no longer serves, and finally breathe. For years I believed that being a mother meant disappearing so they could shine, that being generous was love, that enduring slights in silence was nobility. But the truth is, I became invisible and allowed it, until one day they left me at the dock and I realized it wasn't a mistake. It was a declaration, just family. That's what they said. Well then, now they live with it. Because I was family. I was the one who paid the down payment, the furniture, the baby stroller, the Christmas tablecloth, and even the therapy sessions Emily couldn't afford. I was the family who showed up with rice and chicken when they had nothing for dinner. I was the one who waited for an invitation that never came. And now I am the woman who left quietly, with her head held high and with the only title that matters, my name, in peace. If you like this story, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our next stories.